I see names already on the screen. If they are not for this motion, wipe them out and log in afresh so that we give everybody a fair chance to contribute. Majority Leader.
Majority Leader. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move the adoption of the National Dialogue Committee's report, or what was christened NADCO. And this report, Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that this House adopts the report of the National Dialogue Committee, which was laid on the table of the House on Thursday, 7th December 2023. Honorable Speaker, I was saying this report culminated from a long process that began with the bipartisan talks that were co-chaired by the Honorable Murugara and the Honorable Otiende Omolo. Let me take this opportunity to thank those two members and the members of the bipartisan team that formed the basis of our talks, Honorable Speaker, because we benefited immensely from the work that the two gentlemen had begun through the bipartisan talks. Honorable Speaker, allow me to also take this opportunity to thank the Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka, my co-chair, and the leader of the delegation from the Azimio side, and ably assisted by the leader of minority, and also thank the other members of the committee, including my deputy, the Honorable Cecily Mbarire, the governor for Embu County, the Honorable Aaron Cheriot, Honorable Hassan Omar, the Honorable Eugene Wamalwa, Honorable Amina Mnyazi, and of course I've mentioned the leader of my minority, the Honorable Opiyo Wandayi. Honorable Speaker, this report, or rather the NADCO committee, considered all the 5 issues that we had agreed. And you remember, Honorable Speaker, many of us had other issues besides the 5 issues, and we framed our issues around 5 thematic areas: on electoral justice and related matters, outstanding constitutional matters, fidelity to political parties and coalitions, and the law on multi-party democracy, entrenching of funds into the constitution, and issues. And I don't to dwell into all the recommendations that came out of the report. Members, you remember, is a very bulky report that also factored in memoranda and submissions from many Kenyans. Honorable Speaker, we were able to listen to very many Kenyans who submitted memoranda to us, from about 258 written memoranda that were sent to the committee. 60 stakeholders appeared before the committee, and we listened to over 704 persons. And that tells you, Honorable Speaker, that this report factored in views from very many Kenyans from across the country. Honorable Speaker, we also have a retinue of proposals on legislative instruments or statutory instruments that emanated from this report. And Honorable Speaker, we have a total of 9 legislative instruments or legislative proposals that we shall be submitting to Parliament for publication upon the adoption of this report. And key among these legislative proposals, Honorable Speaker, touch on IEBC, on electoral justice and electoral reforms, Honorable Speaker. And there are quite a number of legislative proposals, beginning with the reconstitution of the IEBC panel. We have proposed amendments to the IEBC Act of 2011 to provide that the selection panel, Honorable Speaker, will be reconstituted. And Honorable Speaker, you remember the courts only a few weeks ago, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, in trying to cure the lacuna that exists in law, because you know the panel as it is today, Honorable Speaker, has no timelines, and they could take forever, Honorable Speaker. But with the amendment, besides reconstituting the IBC panel and growing the membership from 7 to 9 members to ensure that we have a cross-section of views and interest groups accommodated within the selection panel, we are also creating a timeline, and the panel will now be required to finalize the exercise within 90 days From the day that the panel is appointed, they must complete the work and submit the nominees to the president, and they shall stand dissolved thereafter. Honorable Speaker, we have also allowed the Parliament, both houses, using a simple majority, the latitude to extend time for this panel should they need more time than the 90 days that will be provided for under the new act, should we adopt or rather enact the legislative proposal that amends the IEBC Act of 2011. Honorable Speaker, it is also noteworthy that the committee has recommended a transitional clause to provide that the selection panel existing immediately at the commencement date of the act will cease to exist, but any person who is working in that panel is eligible to be renominated by any of the nominating bodies, Honorable Speaker. So therefore, for instance, the political parties liaison committee that had 2 nominees, they will now have 3 nominees under the new panel, and any of the nominees that were under that selection panel could be renominated by the political parties liaison committee, or in that case, even those under the Parliamentary Service Commission, they can renominate the same people. Those under LSK can, if the selection bodies desire, they can renominate the same people. Honorable Speaker, critical among the other changes, Honorable Speaker, is a recommendation by the committee to Article 89 of the Constitution on delimitation of boundaries. Honorable Speaker, again, you know the courts have also pronounced themselves on the question of delimitation of boundaries, and we had a statutory deadline that lapses at the end of March, which is only next month, Honorable Speaker. And it is therefore not practical under the circumstances to be able to delimit boundaries within a period of a few weeks after the adoption of this report. And therefore we are proposing that Article 89 of the Constitution is amended to provide for extension of the period for conduct of the review of the constituency's boundaries by IEBC, where for any reason, like the case is this time, the review of the names and boundaries of constituents is not completed within the time stipulated under Article 89(2) of the Constitution. And therefore, Honorable Speaker, we shall also be bringing those amendments. Honorable Speaker, on audit of the 2022 presidential elections, we did engage in this matter, and we agreed that in line with the constitutional provisions, Honorable Speaker, that we evaluate all our presidential and election processes. We agreed that we shall not be reviewing since the presidential election was settled, and that is a matter now beyond us, Honorable Speaker, and settled by the Supreme Court. But we shall, in line with our constitutional provisions, be evaluating or rather have a process of an evaluation of the 2022 electoral process, so that, Honorable Speaker, we ensure that future elections, beginning with the 2027 elections, Kenyans are certain that the election results are credible, and the entire electoral process, right from registration of voters, Honorable Speaker, up to the time votes are tallied and winners announced, be it for MCA all the way to governor and presidential elections, that Kenyans can be certain that those elections have followed a process that ensures the entire process is credible, Honorable Speaker. And that, Honorable Speaker, we have created in a report a mechanism where we shall, within 21 days after adoption of this report, have a system where we have a panel that will identify either one firm or 2 firms to conduct an evaluation process of the last elections, Honorable Speaker, with a view to improving on the systems, because this is what our Constitution provides for, that after every election we shall, IEBC actually is mandated under our Constitution to ensure that they have a system that evaluates that electoral process with a view to enhancing or rather to making the processes, the electoral processes, more efficient and more credible election after election. Honorable Speaker, on outstanding constitutional matters, there are issues that touch on 2/3 gender rule, and I know many of our lady members of Parliament have been very keen on this issue. I do know, Honorable Speaker, that there was a ministerial working team on this aspect, and indeed, we did recommend that on the 2/3 gender rule, the committee recommended that the multi-sectoral working group on the realization of the 2/3 gender rule under the Ministry of Public Service, Gender and Affirmative Action finalizes its work and recommend a framework of implementation of the 2/3 gender principle and submit its report to Parliament for consideration. And Honorable Speaker, I had an engagement this afternoon with Honorable Sabina Chege, the party leader of Jubilee, who has been very keen in pursuing this matter. And she has indicated to me that following the meeting we had yesterday between our parliamentary group and the cabinet yesterday in Naivasha, indeed the Ministry of Gender, Ministry of Public Service, Gender and Affirmative Action has indicated to our lady members of parliament that they have indeed concluded this and they have a report ready, and we shall be engaging with the cabinet secretary to be able to relay that report, so that as we adopt this report, Honorable Speaker, we can have that report from the multi-sectoral team form part of the legislative proposals that will come as a consequence of this NADCO report. And we shall be engaging with the Minister, Honorable Aisha, to have that ready. Honorable Speaker, on the cost of living, Honorable Speaker, because this is again, maybe before I get to the cost of living, Honorable Speaker, on entrenching of funds into the Constitution, we did recommend that NGCDF, because of the critical role it plays together with NGAF and the Senate Oversight Fund, that they be entrenched into our Constitution, Honorable Speaker, and more importantly, on the World Development Fund, to ensure that all our MCAs in our constituencies and in our wards have access to a World Development Fund, Honorable Speaker, and every ward, no MCA will have to kneel before a governor to be able to access development funds to their wards. We also recommended that the World Development Fund be established by statute in accordance with Article 207, sub-Article 4B of the Constitution, to ensure that our wards and our ward representatives are also able to carry out their work of oversight over their governors without anybody cajoling them or intimidating them that they will miss out on development funds for their wards. And Honorable Speaker, MCAs will now be able, upon adoption of this report and upon enactment of the requisite legislative proposals, to be able to have development funds allocated to their respective wards. Honorable Speaker, on the establishment of entrenchment of state offices, we also did agree on the establishment of the office of the leader of the official opposition and that of the office of the Prime Cabinet Secretary, Honorable Speaker. And Honorable Speaker, I know those within the Azimio coalition, since they are now the official opposition, they will agree on who will take over that position, Honorable Speaker. And I wish them all the best as in that endeavor. Honorable Speaker, on the cost of living, because Honorable Speaker, the question of the cost of living is one of the matters that we dealt with at length, and there are many proposals that were submitted to us by many stakeholders, including, Honorable Speaker, as I said when I moved the affordable housing bill, on the question of whether to be able to help our economy to recover. Yes. We have an opportunity to have an aggressive investment in huge infrastructure projects, Honorable Speaker, and we are able to engage with economists of repute, including those from the SID, who submitted to the committee, Honorable Speaker, that even developed countries like the Republic of Germany, after the Second World War, they had an aggressive investment of huge infrastructure investments, Honorable Speaker, to help the economy to recover. And we did, for those of us who subscribe to the Kenya Kwanza manifesto, submit before NADCO that part of that endeavor is this housing agenda. And I am glad that even those of our colleagues in the Azimio coalition do agree with us, including the former Prime Minister, that housing as an agenda is critical at this particular time in our republic, Honorable Speaker. And Honorable Speaker, too, on the question of the cost of living, Honorable Speaker, there are many proposals, many good proposals that came from the Azimio coalition, and some, in fact, 90% of what was submitted by the Azimio coalition before NADCO on the cost of living, we are able to adopt those proposals touching on some of the levies that touch on the cost of fuel in this country. Honorable Speaker, we had also points of divergence on principle, Honorable Speaker, and we respectfully agreed that because some of the proposals they had are proposals that touch on their manifesto in Azimio, especially on the question of subsidies and consumption subsidies, and we were able to push our case, and we were able to agree with our colleagues in the Azimio coalition that on the question of consumer subsidies, they allow the government of the day to implement the manifesto that they sold to the people of Kenya that had nothing to do with consumer subsidies, but had everything to do with production subsidies, Honorable Speaker. And I am glad, Honorable Speaker, today, as we speak, months after the very heated engagements that we had in NADCO, including some like the Honorable Eugene Wamalwa, pretending to have walked away on the last minute, Honorable Speaker. And I say pretending because Honorable Eugene Wamalwa was part of the engagements in NADCO up to and including the very last meeting on the Friday before the actual signing. And when he excused himself to travel to Kinshasa, he had indicated he'd come back to sign that report the day after. And let me thank all the members of the NADCO committee because they all signed except the Honorable Eugene Wamalwa. And on the question of the prices of unga, which I know is what was being sold then, I am saying I am glad that today, Honorable Speaker, as we engage in the debate on this report, Honorable Speaker, nobody in this country today, including my colleagues in Azimio, none of them today speaks about the cost of unga when they talk about the cost of living today, Honorable Speaker. I am glad that what we told them in NADCO and what we have told them before, that production subsidies do work. And it is a proven theory in economics that production subsidies give you better results and more lasting results than consumption subsidies. Today, Honorable Speaker, the price of unga that was at 260, I saw yesterday somebody posted one of the groups, one of the brands today retailing at 114 shillings without consumption subsidies, Honorable Speaker. Farmers, patriotic farmers in this country, Honorable Speaker, courtesy of the subsidized fertilizer, have produced millions of bags that they would never have produced, Honorable Speaker, had they not accessed the subsidized fertilizer that was going for 7,000 shillings only a year ago, but today, a year and a half ago, Honorable Speaker, but today they're able to access fertilizer at a price of 2,500 shillings. And that is what has brought down the cost of living, Honorable Speaker, in the terms of the price of unga. And I'm glad those of our friends who donned sufurias on their heads, today their sufurias are very busy in the kitchen, in their kitchens with unga at 114 shillings, Honorable Speaker. And some of the most expensive brands retailing at 140 shillings. Brands that were going at a price of 278 when we were being pushed to go for fertilizer subsidies, for consumption subsidies, Honorable Speaker. Let me, Honorable Speaker, without belaboring a lot of these things much, because the report has been debated even in the public fora, plead with all of us to adopt this report. Is a product of a very fruitful bipartisan engagement, Honorable Speaker. The spirit of NADCO was to ensure that never again, Honorable Speaker, in this country shall we ever have to fight.
Mr. Speaker, the majority leader is about to wind up, but did you hear him saying that the cost of unga has reduced? From which shop, may I ask, from which shops in Nairobi does the majority leader shop from, where the cost of unga is reduced to 140? May I ask, although perhaps I'm going to different shops.
First of all, this is not question time. Carry on.
There you are prosecuting your point of order wrongly. You're asking questions instead of asking whether he's in order to say what he's saying.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. And you know, Honorable Speaker, I was careful because I'm not in the business of promoting brands. But I have just seen it was the Honorable Ruku who shared the photo of one of the brands retailing in a supermarket in Nairobi at 114 shillings. You could share that picture with Honorable TJ. Honorable Speaker, in conclusion, I was saying this NADCO process, Honorable Speaker, was informed by the desire by all Kenyans to engage in our politics in a way that is devoid of violence, Honorable Speaker. And I am glad that we are able to transact business in NADCO in a very civil manner, in a spirit of give and take, and the Honorable Opiyo will bear me witness that even the most difficult questions within NADCO, we are able to deal with them in a very good way, in a very civil way, without anybody throwing words at each other and being able to engage. And the whole spirit, Honorable Speaker, of the National Dialogue Committee was that spirit of dialogue. And we did indicate, Honorable Speaker, even as we engaged, that that is a desire of every Kenyan, that whether it is problems that emanate from our electoral processes, whether it is problems that come from the cost of living, never again shall Kenyans have to engage in violence, but we shall be able to dialogue with each other, talk to each other, Honorable Speaker, and be able to resolve all issues that are of concern to us as Kenyans in an amicable manner through dialogue. Honorable Speaker, with those many remarks, see my time is over. I beg to move and plead with all of us to support this report, adopt it so that we allow the House to be able to be seized of the legislative proposals that have far-reaching effects, especially those that touch on our electoral processes and the challenges that bedevil our IEBC and delimitation of boundaries. With those many remarks, I beg to move and request the Honorable Leader of Minority, the Honorable Opiyo Wandayi, the NADCO Deputy Delegation Leader of the Azimio Coalition, to second.
Yes, Honorable Ruku, what is...
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is good to inform Honorable Kajwang.
Order, you're out of order. He's not on the floor. Order. Cross over and go and quietly tell him.
The Honorable Speaker, how I wish our colleague members would learn the rules of this House and avoid talking us in circles or treating us to unnecessary shenanigans. Honorable Speaker, let me start as I second the motion for the adoption of the National Dialogue Committee report by saying that the establishment of the NADCO was as a result of very, very painful experiences that the country was going through following the elections of August 2022 and following this immense suffering that Kenyans were going through as a result of the skyrocketing cost of living. Those twin issues took hundreds, if not thousands, of Kenyans to the streets across the country. And the country was teetering on the brink of total collapse of governance and indeed lawlessness. And therefore, we must thank the initiators of this NADCO process, the Honorable Raila Odinga and the Honorable William Ruto. We can also not forget to thank immensely President Olusegun Obasanjo for having made efforts to ensure that both parties saw the sense to come to the table. Honorable Speaker, the spirit that guided the NADCO process was that of give and take. Just like in any negotiation process, it was a question of giving and taking. We had a raft of issues as the Azimio coalition that we had placed on the table. Similarly, the Kenya Kwanza side had their issues. At the end of the day, we were able to harmonize these issues and develop a framework of engagement, which guided our negotiations up to the end. I'm happy that in the face of enormous challenges, in the face of serious differences in opinion, we were able to arrive at specific recommendations touching on specific areas or thematic areas, and to condense this in a report, which is the subject of this motion that is before us today. The Honorable Speaker, I want to summarize really, because 10 minutes is too short. Some of the takeaways in the report, without necessarily repeating, are one, the roadmap towards reconstitution of the IEBC. The second one is the governance structure, the governance around political parties and their management. There is the issue of the audit of the elections. We have agreed on this matter to establish within 21 days upon the adoption of this report a panel consisting of 3 persons from each side to develop the terms of reference that will guide this audit process. I want to leave it to that panel to be able to establish these TORs. We must also, of course, talk about the World Development Fund, but more importantly, the matter of the increase of the allocation of the national revenues to the counties from the current minimum 15% to 20%. Those are some of the takeaways. But coming back to the question of the IBC, I keep on saying, time and again, that in this part of the world, the matter of elections is life and death. Believe you me or not. Elections in this country, just like it is in this part of the world, is a matter of life and death. And therefore the body that is to be charged with the responsibility of managing elections must be like Caesar's wife, beyond reproach, and must enjoy the confidence of the wider majority of the populace, and indeed must enjoy the confidence of the key players in the electoral process. That is what informed NADCO's recommendation to restructure the IEBC, to restart the process of appointing the IEBC commissioners, and to recommend specific amendments to the Elections Act, to the IEBC Act, and indeed to the Constitution. We in NADCO resolved that never again should the country go back to where it was just few weeks or so before the establishment of the NADCO. That never again should we have a situation where an IBC would be split down the middle at the critical moment of announcing the results of presidential elections. That it was never the intention of the framers of our Constitution, and indeed Kenyans, when they adopted this Constitution in 2010, that a body charged with the onerous responsibility of managing elections would be split in the middle at the critical stage of announcing presidential election results. The raft of recommendations in this report are, among other things, aimed at curing that very, very serious problem that can only be, that has come to be associated with only Kenya. Honorable Speaker. The Honorable Speaker, the issue of the two-third gender principle, the not more than two-third gender principle, has been adequately captured in the report. It was our view in NADCO that since the time was not adequate, and since there was a working group, a multi-sectoral working group, dealing with that question, that we give it time to complete its work and compile a report, which report would be treated as part of the NADCO. The report that would come from the multi-sectoral group, working group, dealing with the question of the not more than two-third gender principle, within the letter and spirit of the NADCO report, would be part of the NADCO report. And I want to join Honorable Ichungwa in urging that group. I had a chance to meet them yesterday, Honorable Speaker. They came calling to my office, and I had very, very fruitful engagement with them. And I urged them yesterday to fast-track the process and submit their report with the proposed instruments to this House, even as we proceed with this process of implementing the NADCO recommendations. Honorable Speaker, there are some issues that the committee, in its wisdom, recommended that they be referred to the principals, the two principals, Honorables William Ruto and Honorable Raila Odinga. Honorable Speaker, one of the issues that we agreed should be referred to the two principals is the matter of the Cherera 4. The 4 IBC commissioners that differed in opinion with the other three. It was in the wisdom of the committee that matter be referred to the two principals to perhaps pursue a settlement outside the court process. We also agreed that on the matter of violence, including violence against the public by the police and police killings, be referred to the principals with a view to forming a system, to establishing a system of undertaking thorough investigations and holding whoever is responsible.
1 minute.
So, Honorable Speaker, in a nutshell, as I conclude, given that the document we are discussing today, the NADCO report, is a negotiated document, is a consensus document, our understanding and our position is that such a document is not open to any form of amendment. And that principle also applies equally to the attendant instruments, that is the proposed legislative amendments to statutes and the Constitution. So with those very many remarks, I second and I urge my colleagues to adopt this report in totality and to allow the country to move forward in one accord. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Minority Leader. I now propose the question, which is that this House adopts the report of the National Dialogue Committee laid on the table of the House on Thursday, 7th December 2023. Karoli